What is up, everyone? It's Fahrenheit 4051 here, and today I'll be showing you my collection of manual pull stations. Pull stations were invented by Señor Manuel Pulstaciones of Spain, who brought them to the United States just a few short years before the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act passed in 1930. Okay, that by the way was a joke. Pull stations have been an integral part of the fire alarm industry pretty much since its inception. You'll probably find them at the exit of most public buildings. They come in three varieties: conventional, addressable, and coded. And although this itself is not a coded pull station, there are coded pull stations that look pretty much identical to this one. But we'll go into more depth about that later. So this right here is my Fire-Lite BG-6. This pull station is from the third generation of fire alarms, the era from the late 70s to early 1980s when panels were relay-based and field devices were just starting to get smaller. Pretty much everything was coated in this nice shiny red paint, although you wouldn't be able to tell by looking at this thing since it's in pretty rough shape. Still, this BG-6 does show all the features of your standard conventional pull station. The handle locks in place when you pull it down. This is a holdover from when fire alarm circuits were non-latching, but still, pretty much every pull station still locks down, with the exception of coded pull stations. So we're going to open it up. It uses a hex key. Opening up this pull station is rather tedious because it uses a screw rather than a lock. So now if we look inside, you'll see that as a conventional pull station, it's pretty much just a plunger switch right here, little button, in a fancy casing. On the back you can see the terminals, and now we can close it up. Okay, that's good enough. Some of the paint actually peeled off in the process of me showing you this, and a word of caution to collectors: anything made before I think 1979 has the risk of containing lead paint. So I'm going to actually go ahead and clean this up. That's usually why I don't fool around with the BG-6. I just leave it on display because that paint peels like crazy. So the next pull station I'll be showing you is the Fire-Lite BG-10. This is the successor to the BG-6 and was introduced during the fourth generation of fire alarms, where panels began to use solid-state electronics instead of relays, and these more textured finishes came into fashion. I'm not actually going to pull this for you because resetting it is such a huge pain in the butt, but I will show you the Notifier NBG-10L, which is the Notifier version and also includes a key lock, making it much easier to reset. The station is dual action, so push in and pull down. And if we open it up with our notifier key, we'll see that it contains the same plunger switch as the BG-6. And even though the housing is plastic, the back is still metal, and looks very similar to the BG-6. So the BG-10 series was actually recalled, I believe back in 2013, because the push-button switch inside would actually degrade over time and prevent the station from sending an alarm. The hex versions also had this problem where if you tighten the screw too tight, the housing would crack, leading to false alarms. So false positive and false negative, no bueno. Fortunately though, these pull stations were replaced with the BG-12 series. The BG-12 series is Notifier, Fire-Lite, and Silent Night's default pull station, introduced in 1999. The BG-12 is made almost entirely out of plastic, but the design is much better overall. In fact, I would say that it's one of the most ingeniously designed pull stations out there. And I'll show you why. So we're going to pull it, and as you can see, there's a little stripe right here that says activated, making it easier to see which pull station has been activated if you're on a conventional system. This one is an NBG-12LX, which is an addressable model. You can see the addressable module right here. Addressable essentially means that the panel can identify exactly which device has been activated, rather than just which initiating device circuit has been activated. So this little contour right here, when you close the station, will actually reset the switch back into the off position. Using a toggle switch also means that you can open the station without automatically tripping the alarm. So that's pretty much it for my Notifier and Fire-Lite suite. Now we're going to move on to Simplex. Right here is my Simplex 4251-111 Chevron pull station. These were among the earliest pull stations that Simplex had to offer, and were originally produced by IBM before Simplex bought out their fire alarm division. Now, the actual ownership of this design, I believe, went to SH Couch, who then distributed them to Simplex. It's a single action pull station. You just pull down right here, and if we open it up with this 3/32 of an inch hex key, we'll see that it uses a standard plunger switch. Earlier versions, the IBM versions, used a mercury bulb switch, which almost looked like a little knife protruding out, but accomplished the same thing. The handle pushed against it, and then released the button when pulled down. Close that back up. Righty-tighty. This one is single pull, single throw, which means it just has one set of contacts for the switch. So, SH Couch, the manufacturer of the Chevron, was bought out by Faraday in the 1970s, and so was Standard Electric Time. This is a Standard Electric Time branded Chevron produced by Faraday. As you can see, there are a few differences. Some Chevrons were made with the red and white color scheme, and after Faraday started making these, they stopped painting the lettering on the handle. Another key difference is that this one, instead of screw terminals, just uses a very small switch with pigtail connectors. Now if we pull it down, it does the same thing and uses the same exact hex key. This is model F1G. So one of the things you could do with these pull stations, and many other pull stations, is insert a brake rod. This helps prevent accidental activation of the station. You just flip this cover right here and insert it into the grooves. Earlier brake rods were made of glass instead of plastic. Now we're going to take a look at the Chevron's big brother, the U-bar. No, it's not the similar looking 4263 coated pull station, but actually the conventional version, model 4252-11.
Oh my gosh, Simplex 4252-11, but that's the rarest fire alarm in all of Duel Monsters!
The U-bar uses the same hex size as the Chevron, but unfortunately the person who removed this did so with brute force, meaning all I have here is this lousy screw. This model also has an auxiliary switch, which uses a Simplex A key. Among other things, this switch can be used in two-stage systems to switch from the pre-signal to the general evacuation signal if personnel spot a fire. Now, if that's not complicated enough, you can also use your hex key to insert a brake rod, like so. Turn this, pull the handle down slightly, though not all the way, close that back in there, lose the brake rod somehow, there we go. And there you have it. Now when this handle gets pulled down, the rod will break. If we open up the station, you can see it's so big that it needs these little support struts to hold it in place. See, just a little plunger switch in here, and the auxiliary switch on the front cover. The switch on the back of this one is actually double pole single throw. So you'll see one set of contacts here and another set of contacts here. One of the things you could do with that is have one set of contacts activate some kind of auxiliary relay, or even just an indicator light above the station to show that it's been activated. So just for fun, let's pull this lever with the brake rod in place. Mazel tov. So here's something I did forget to mention, what a coded pull station is. You know that a conventional pull station is essentially a switch that causes the IDC circuit to short out, and an addressable pull station allows you to see exactly which device has been pulled. Well, a coded pull station is basically a mechanical version of an addressable pull station. It's a very old technology that has its roots in the street master boxes, but they were used inside of buildings. Instead of just locking in place, the handle would actually be used to wind a clockwork mechanism and cause a code wheel to spin. And the number and configuration of the teeth on the code wheel would actually correspond to the code that would be played over the signals. Building personnel would be able to figure out exactly where and on which floor the fire alarm's been activated on. So the 4263 series, which look exactly like this except they'd have that clockwork mechanism on the back, when you pull the handle it would require a lot more force and it would like wind back up. It would be like, and it would snap back up and then the clockwork would start going. We've probably all seen this next station before, the Simplex T-bar, in this case the 4251-20. Most of the schools I attended throughout the years had these in at least one part of the building. The station resets with a Simplex B key, and if we open it up, we can see the plunger switch inside and the lever mechanism. Now the design on these did change slightly throughout the years. The original versions had a metal handle instead of a plastic one, and the arrow was absent. This one right here, I'll just show you the back as well. Here are the screw terminals. Single pull, single throw. This one has a solid handle, whereas this one has a more hollow one. I don't know if you can see the difference here. There's also a 4251-30, which is the break glass version. It has a hammer on the front and a frame that once you smash the glass, it'll just automatically drop down. Unfortunately, I don't have one of those in my collection at this time. The build quality on these 4251s is a whole lot sturdier than on these newer 2099 series T-bars. This is my Simplex 2099-9795 addressable pull station. If we pull down the handle on this one, we could see the stark contrast with the other ones. It's very thin when compared. It is very thin compared with the 4251 and uses a lot less plastic. If we open it up, we can see that tiny little addressable module and instructions for operating the dip switches. So this is an addressable Simplex T-bar. It uses a MapNet 2 module, which is designed for use with the 4100 and 4020 fire alarm control panels. My high school had a 4020 and actually had these in the main part of the building. This line of addressable pull stations was succeeded by the 4099 series, which uses the IDNet protocol. This newer protocol is more advanced and allows for more devices per SLC. Unlike the Notifier and the Fire-Lite pull stations, which use the rotary dials which you could just turn by screwdriver, this one uses dip switches, which may be a little frustrating since you have to write the numbers in binary. The conventional 2099 pull stations, like the 2099-9754, are still available for legacy systems. Even if they're not quite as sturdy as the old ones, I still really like these pull stations, and they're very fun to pull, honestly. Just don't do that in a public building unless there's an emergency. This pull station right here is an Autocall 4050-001T. It's a rather colorful pull station. Red touch black, good for a jack. Red touch yellow, bad for a fellow. I think that's supposed to be about snakes. Now this is not to be confused with the Simplex 4050, which is a really loud AC-powered horn. These pull stations were produced during the 5th generation, from the late 80s to the early 1990s. Later versions had a red border instead of a black one, although I prefer the black. These are just one of many pull stations you can find at Tunxus Community College, along with the Chevron and the 4251-20. To open up the station, we're going to use a standard Phillips screwdriver. Take a look inside. see right here, it actually uses this very stiff toggle switch. Interestingly, this pull station uses a pushing spring on the bottom rather than a pulling spring on the top. It's quite difficult to pull. So we're going to actually close that back up. On the back we could see that it uses pigtail connectors rather than screw terminals, kind of like the standard F1G. Aesthetically, these pull stations are really nice, but I can't say I'm a fan of that extremely tight spring. Nowadays, the Americans with Disabilities Act mandates that pull stations require no more than 5 pounds of force to activate. I just found this out, but Potter Electric actually still lists these on their website. And yes, they're ADA compliant. Unlike this one. Yeah. So we talked a little bit about Faraday when discussing the Chevron pull stations. Before they bought out Couch and started producing Chevrons, these were the pull stations that Faraday offered. As you can see, it has a little chevron of its own, and it's about as easy to pull as the other chevrons. You also get this nice little dotted line to indicate that the station has been activated. This tag's in really poor condition, but right there's the model number, model 10123-1. Now, to reset this pull station, you'll actually need a triangular bit. This locking mechanism is not made out of metal, but rather what looks like Bakelite plastic. Now, I'm going to cheat and actually use my fingers to turn it open. Interestingly, this pull station hinges on the side like the BG-12 rather than from the bottom like most stations. It's got a tiny little plunger switch right here, very stiff, and also apparently made of Bakelite plastic. Here's the little implement that presses down against the switch. It's not spring-loaded at all. Close it back up. On the back we have screw terminals, and if you look closely, you can actually see the exposed switching mechanism right here. Let's pull it down. Pretty neat. Lastly, but not leastly, we have my Edwards, or EST, SIGA 270. This is the addressable version of the popular 270 SPO conventional pull station, which has been in production since at least the 1970s. So we'll pull it down. Older versions are quite difficult to pull, but this one is rather easy. It resets with a flathead screwdriver, but this thing at the top is actually not a screw, but a spring-loaded lock. Like the Autocall pull station, it has a toggle switch. There's also a little door right here for inserting the brake rod. So reading online, I have seen some complaints about the top locking mechanism. Most pull stations lock from the front. I've heard that it can make these pull stations a bit hard to work with when used in conjunction with a stopper cover. That's those plastic covers that go over the pull station to protect it from false alarms and accidental activations. Now, on this module, there are no switches that allow you to set the address. That's because on the SIGA protocol, this is done on the software side at the panel. Now, I'm just a collector, and I have no first-hand experience with how this works. But I have heard horror stories about the dreaded map fault that results when devices are improperly mapped on the panel. Now, with that in mind, I do quite like the physical design of this pull station. And as someone who's not really a fan of stopper covers, I don't really mind that the lock is on the top of the pull station. Well, there you have it. That's about it for today. I hope you found this video interesting, and if you did, don't forget to leave a comment, like, and subscribe. And if you like ringing bells so much, don't forget to ring that bell down below. This has been Fahrenheit 4051, and I hope you all have a great weekend. Here's something interesting. It uses a vertical toggle switch. Oh no, I'm an idiot. So 4251-1, 4251-11, 4251-111, I believe that number is related to the number of pulls and throws in the switch. This one is double pull, single throw, which means that it has two sets of contacts. Wait a second. No. This one is single pull, single throw. This prevents Now, if that's not complicated enough, you can also use the hex key to insert a brake rod, like so. You loosen this little tab right here, pull the handle down slightly, pop that in properly. What am I doing here? I'm not able to figure out how that works. I'm a little confuzzled here. I think you may have to open the station. What have I done? Oh boy. Oh, talk about complicated.